racing.
Sure, absolutely. I was actually talking with Jimmy Johnson the other day, and he said something interesting to me that I wanted to share. And he thought that if anybody has a real shot, because I asked the question, I said, "Who do you think wins the Sprint Cup race this year?" And in his opinion, the guy that has the best shot at it is, surprisingly, he said Martin Truex Jr. He's had a fast car all year, run really good races, and he said that's the guy that he thinks could take it all.
Yeah, and it's certainly very possible. Furniture Row Racing is one of those underdog teams that nobody thinks about. For the
Right.
last, several years, they've been slowly building this team up, and they finally have a driver and consistency. Ever since they joined Joe Gibbs Racing with that alliance and Toyota, they finally found some consistency. And let's be honest, all year long they've been just as good as every one of those Gibbs cars, but they've had some bad luck. They're lighting the match at the right time. They're about to take off at the right time. The other driver about to take off at the right time is Carl Larson. He may be the Cinderella story. Didn't get a win until this year for the first time. He's been in the Sprint Cup Series for a little while, and Kyle Larson, man, he could very well come out of nowhere and win this.
Yeah, I agree. Carl's been always up there. What's the curse of second place on him though? That's been the
Yeah,
story.
Kyle's been great, very consistent in the past, and he's shown just the edge to get it out there and hang it all out. When he first came into the Cup Series, that race at Bristol against Kyle Busch, he almost took the win in the Nationwide Series at the time, now Xfinity Series, and he really showed his gall, I guess is the best way to put it. And then he comes up in the Cup Series, and it took a little while to get that first win, but I'll tell you, they are on a rail right now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be an interesting race down the stretch. Who do you get? Who do you think Cole is going to be pulling up the as far as right in the middle and being in contention as far as being the that problem driver or drivers that's going to give these other guys that run for their money.
Well, I mean, in the long run, again, it's the Gibbs guys, but Jimmy Johnson, you can't really count him out. These tracks historically are great for him. That's why he's done so well in the chase, no matter which variation of it you're talking about.
Hmm.
Jimmy Johnson, unfortunately for Hendrick Motorsports, they haven't been that great. Ironically, as soon as Jeff Gordon comes in, stepping in for the injured Dale Earnhardt Jr., the team seem to get things a little bit back together. Whether it's the feedback from a guy who hasn't been in one of these cars in a while, or if it's just the team in general getting better. I don't know what it is, but the Hendrick Motorsports has picked up just a little bit, and I think Chase Elliott and Jimmy Johnson certainly could contend. I think the guys you actually are looking at that will not contend are Busher, Dillon, McMurray, and I'm going to guess one of the contenders that we've been talking about most of the season ends up getting knocked out in the first round just because of bad luck. We've
Right.
seen Kyle Busch go into the postseason and crash two out of the first three races and never survive it. It's very possible that any one of these guys could be that guy. I don't know, but Jimmy Johnson, historically, when he's been practicing well, tends to crash lately. I don't know what it is. He could
Yeah.
not escape the first round. Kurt Busch is a guy I think could rattle some cages along with Tony Stewart and
Right.
cause some difficulties for people. That's their history.
Right. Do you think it has to do with maybe a little bit of emotion? I mean, these guys have been driving for a long time, and they see some of these younger guys coming in and making some moves that they're just not, let's say, just comfortable with. Like you saw Tony Stewart the other day, or last week or the week before, get a little frustrated with, I believe it was Allmendinger. No, it wasn't Allmendinger. But anyway, made a bad move on him in a pass, and Tony just a little frustrated, got up under him, and just took him out. Which I thought was hilarious. And then afterwards, he said that was something about what happened in pre-race qualifying or something to that effect. But do you see that kind of thing happening?
Well, look, Tony Stewart wears his emotions on his sleeve. There's no doubt about that. He has this entire career, no matter what series he's racing in. Tony's had some run-ins late this season with Chris Scott, or sorry, Brian Scott. I don't think Brian Scott's one of those guys you're going to see attempt to do anything to ruin Tony's day throughout the playoffs. He did have the run-in recently with Ryan Newman last week, and that's another guy that as much respect as Ryan does have for Tony, I don't expect a whole lot, but he is making a lot of enemies late, and that's tough. You don't want to go into the last 10 races with enemies because it's
Right.
only three strings per series to get to the final four drivers at Homestead. And if you're making enemies, there's a lot of chances for somebody to end your shot at the title.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's look down at the middle of the pack. Down there at like number 20, Allmendinger, Ryan Blaney, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Greg Biffle, and surprisingly enough, Danica Patrick at 24, Paul Menard 25th, and then Dale Jr. at 26th. Do you see anybody coming out of the middle of the pack there that could potentially challenge for the Cup?
Well, with the way the format is, none of these guys can challenge for the cup, unfortunately. Once the chase starts, it's only those 16 and down. But the question really is who's going to win races, and I do think you'll see at least two of the races won by drivers that are not competing for the championship. One of the unique things about NASCAR, obviously, versus the football, versus football or baseball, is they're still on the track even though they're not competing for the championship. They're trying to get wins. Ryan Blaney has been phenomenal this season on and off with the Wood Brothers team. It's a team that doesn't have a charter, so they could not qualify for races, but they've had the speed all year long. Greg Biffle recently started to run a little bit better. Paul Menard, we've seen run pretty consistently with this new crew chief, but they've had some bad luck. The guy that you're going to see, I think, win a race that's not in the chase is Jeff Gordon.
Right.
Martinsville's one of his best tracks. Martinsville, year in and year out, he's a competitor. He came from three laps down after the track took a chunk out of the front of his car one year and won the race. That one track is one he can win every time he goes there. I think Ryan Blaney and Jeff Gordon may be the two drivers that come out of nowhere and win a race.
Hmm. So, and then my understanding is by winning that race, that automatically puts you in contention, correct?
Not those drivers, since they're not in the chase. If you are in the chase, you do move on to the next segment. So, for example, if anybody 1 through 16 right now wins this week, they are guaranteed to move to the next round, the
Gotcha.
round of eight, round of 12. Sorry. So right now we got 16 drivers competing for it, and like I said, you're going to see four drop off after these first three races, and I think it's not really going to be much of a surprise of doing one drive.
Right, right. Okay, so let's narrow it down. Who do you see in the final four?
The final four right now, like I said, we're going to see Gibbs drivers in it. We know that. I think Kyle Busch and Denny Hamlin are my two favorites from that camp. And then the extended family, as we call it, Furniture Row Racing, their alliance with Joe Gibbs, Martin Truex Jr. I think he's going to be in it. I think it's going to be three Toyotas versus one Chevy. Um, I do think it's going to be probably Jimmy Johnson or Kyle Larson, might come out of nowhere guy. I actually don't believe any of the Penske Fords will make it to the final four. They haven't been as strong as they had been mid-season. But then
Right.
again, Joey Logano and Brad Keselowski have the ability to win any race.
True.
So it's possible, but my expectation is you got three Toyotas from the Gibbs family, and then you have a Chevrolet from Hendrick.
Right. Okay. And then let's go to the final thing, which everybody wants to know is who's your pick to win it all?
Early right now, I don't think it's really going to be a crazy surprise, but it will be a surprise for some. I think, and I honestly, I'm not a big fan of the man, but I think Denny Hamlin is actually going to pull this thing out.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah, Denny's team after this Richmond race really seems to be coming together. They're another team that's lighting the fire at the right time. And for whatever reason, that car has been very consistent all year long. And I do feel like that team's going to come out and win this championship this year. I wouldn't have picked them at the beginning of the year, and my heart never wants to pick them. I'm not a fan of the driver, not a
Right.
fan of the team. But Denny's team is on it right now, and I do feel like there's a very, very good chance that they win this thing.
Okay. All right. Well, that's your pick. My pick is Martin Truex Jr. I see. I mean, the car's been strong all year. The team's been great. I think that maybe this is his year. I'm not the expert that you are, but definitely could see him right there in the mix at the end and maybe pulling it out.
Yeah, I don't doubt that team has a shot at it. Furniture Row Racing out of Colorado. Who would have thought that a team could actually establish themselves and build into the powerhouse that they are with this Gibbs affiliation? They finally have the funding they need on the back end to try and compete for a championship. They're adding a second team next year. They would love to hoist the cup. so that they can go ahead and get ready for the next team with a pretty good sized check.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let me give you, let me have you real quick. Give me your assessment of some of the newer drivers this year, um, as far as who you think may next year be very much in contention.
Well, I mean, we have Ryan Blaney. We have Chase Elliott. Obviously, these guys are new to the series; they're rookies. We have a couple others, but I mean, really, those are the two guys I'm focused on from Cup Series this year. There's a couple guys in the Xfinity Series. You know, you got Eric Jones. Eric Jones is one of my favorite drivers coming up in general right now. I
Mm-hmm.
know he's had a rough time this year in the Xfinity Series at times, but he's a very talented driver. When we saw him subbing for Kyle Busch earlier last year when he was injured, it was one of those things that you could see the talent, and then he just overcorrected a car and smashed into the wall, and it was the end of his day. And you could just see the talent coming out of him. And once he gets in these cars at full time regularly in the Cup Series, he is going to be very competitive, especially on that Gibbs team. Chase Elliott, I think, will win a race before the year's out, and I think he will be a very big time competitor next year. Eric Jones moving to the 77 to join Furniture Row Racing as a teammate to Martin Truex Jr. He'll win a race next year. And I do think that Ryan Blaney will win a race next year. I don't think we'll see him win one this year unless it's one of these big tracks. He is my dark horse for most of the races this year, though. I think he has the highest chance of winning a race. I think he could pull it out, but he's going to at least win one next year if he doesn't this year.
Awesome. Okay, and last question for you. Of the guys that have been around for a while, obviously we know Tony Stewart's retiring after this year, but who else do you think might be gone?
Well, I mean, unfortunately for a lot of fans, and I know he is the guy that they all love, Dale Earnhardt Jr. I think we got maybe 2 more years with him. These concussions are getting to him in a big way, unfortunately. I have spoken with TJ Majors, it was his spotter, and it does seem like he is recovering finally, but it took a lot longer than expected. He had a probably good first 2 weeks of the time off here, and then suddenly it just plateaued, and his improvement completely stopped. He has been working through